I didn't expect to learn the most important lesson of my life from someone I barely noticed. And honestly, that's what still bothers me. For years, I believed I was paying attention to what mattered. I worked in a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. Nothing glamorous, but stable, predictable. I had my routines. Morning coffee from the cafe downstairs, same desk by the window, same lunch break at 12:30. My life felt organized, measured, productive. If you had asked me back then what mattered most, I would have said growth, achievement, progress. I liked tracking things. Promotions, performance reviews, savings, steps walked, hours slept. It made me feel in control, like life was something you could optimize if you paid close enough attention. And I thought I was paying attention. There was a man who worked in our building named Daniel. I didn't know his last name for months. He handled maintenance, fixing lights, unclogging sinks, adjusting the thermostat when someone complained. He was quiet, not unfriendly, just background. I remember thinking once, he's lucky. No meetings, no deadlines. I assumed his job was simple, stress-free. That was my first assumption. Every morning around 8:15, Daniel would be in the lobby, adjusting something. A plant out of place, a crooked rug, a smudge on the glass door. He worked carefully, like details mattered. One Tuesday, I walked in late for a meeting, clearly annoyed. My presentation slides wouldn't load properly and I had spent half the night fixing them. As I rushed past him, I dropped my access badge. I didn't even notice. "Hey," he called gently behind me. I turned, already impatient. "You dropped this." I grabbed it quickly. "Thanks," I said, barely looking at him. He smiled, not forced, not offended, just calm. "Big day?" he asked. I hesitated. "Yeah, kind of." He nodded. "Hope it goes how you need it to." That phrase stayed with me for some reason. Not "good luck," not "you'll crush it," just "hope it goes how you need it to." The presentation didn't go well. The client pushed back hard. My manager questioned my strategy in front of everyone. I drove home replaying every mistake. I kept thinking about control, how I could have prepared more, predicted better, managed the room differently. The next morning, I saw Daniel again. "You survived," he said casually. I laughed dryly. Barely. He didn't ask for details, didn't offer advice, he just nodded like he understood something without explanation. Over the next few weeks, small conversations started happening. Nothing deep, weather, sports, elevator delays, but I began noticing something. He asked simple questions that made me pause. "Long day yesterday? You look tired. You sleeping okay? Everything working the way it should upstairs?" They weren't dramatic questions, but they felt specific, like he was actually observing. One evening, I stayed late finishing a proposal. Around 7:30 p.m., I heard tools clinking near the hallway. Daniel was fixing a ceiling panel. "You're still here," he said. "So are you," I replied. He smiled. "Things break more at night than people think." I laughed, assuming he meant pipes or wiring, but he didn't laugh back. A week later, something strange happened. I walked into the office kitchen and saw Daniel sitting alone at the table. That was unusual. He usually ate elsewhere. He had a small notebook open. I wasn't trying to read it, but I caught a glimpse of writing, lists of names. My first thought was random and unfair. Is he keeping track of people? It felt odd. He quickly closed it when he saw me. "Sorry," he said, almost embarrassed. "For what?" I asked. "For being in your space." That sentence caught me off guard. "It's everyone's space," I replied. He gave a small nod, but something about his expression felt heavier than usual. That night, curiosity stayed with me. The next day, I asked one of the receptionists how long Daniel had worked there. She said almost 15 years. He knows everything about this building. 15 years. I had been there 3. Somehow, that shifted something in my mind. He wasn't just background, he was constant. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday. I had just received news that I didn't get a promotion I'd been working towards for months. I felt embarrassed, more than disappointed, like I had misjudged my own value. I didn't want to go home yet, so I stayed in the lobby after hours, staring at my phone without reading anything. Daniel was mopping near the entrance. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I almost said fine, that automatic word. But instead I said, I didn't get something I thought I deserved. He leaned the mop against the wall and sat on the bench across from me. That's a heavy feeling. I remember thinking how strange it was that he didn't ask what the promotion was or why I deserved it. He just named the emotion. Heavy. We sat in silence for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Sure." "Why do you always ask people how they are, like you really mean it?" He looked down at his hands. "Because most people don't," he said simply. Then he told me something I wasn't expecting. Years ago, before working in maintenance, he had been a paramedic. He paused after saying that, like he wasn't sure how much to share. He said, "I used to arrive at scenes where everything had already changed. Car accidents, heart attacks, moments that split someone's life into before and after. I felt my chest tighten. After a while," he continued, "I noticed something. In those moments, nobody talked about promotions or deadlines or who won an argument." He looked at me directly. "They talked about people, regrets, words they didn't say." The lobby felt quieter than usual. "I left that job after my son got sick." He added, "Cancer. He was 9. I didn't know what to say." "He survived," Daniel said softly. "But sitting in hospital rooms changes your brain. You start measuring life differently." That's when I understood the notebook. I write down names, people who look like they're carrying something. I try to remember to ask them again later, just to see if they're still carrying it. I felt something shift inside me. Not dramatic, but undeniable. All this time I thought I was the one tracking meaningful data, performance metrics, growth charts, and here was this man quietly tracking something else entirely: human weight. The consequences of that conversation weren't immediate. I didn't wake up the next day transformed, but I started noticing my own behavior. How often I said, "I'm good," without thinking. How quickly I judged someone's job as easier or less important. How rarely I asked follow-up questions. I began experimenting with small changes. Instead of asking coworkers about projects first, I asked how they were doing and waited for a real answer. Instead of rushing through phone calls with my parents, I slowed down. I noticed something uncomfortable too. When you genuinely ask someone how they are, you have to be ready for the answer. Sometimes it's inconvenient. Sometimes it reveals things you'd rather not carry. But slowly, my perspective on success started shifting. I still cared about progress, I still worked hard, but the definition expanded. I realized I had been optimizing my life for achievement, not meaning. And meaning, I began to understand, often hides in ordinary moments. A few months later, Daniel's son visited the building after school. A teenager now, healthy, laughing. I watched Daniel introduce him to the security guard, the receptionist, even to me. "This is the guy who always looks stressed in the mornings," Daniel joked gently. His son laughed, but there was pride in Daniel's eyes that I had never seen during any conversation about work. That was the real metric. Not titles, not salaries, who you show up for. The final shift happened unexpectedly. One afternoon, I saw Daniel speaking to a coworker who had recently lost her mother. He wasn't giving advice, he wasn't trying to fix anything. He just stood there, listening, really listening. Later that day, I asked him, "Doesn't it get heavy carrying everyone else's stuff?" He smiled. "I don't carry it. I just let them know they're not carrying it alone." That sentence stayed with me longer than any performance review ever had. The hidden truth I learned from him wasn't complicated. We spend so much time trying to control outcomes, careers, money, timelines, but the moments that define us usually involve other people, the conversations we almost avoided, the questions we almost didn't ask, the patience we almost didn't give. Empathy isn't dramatic, it's repetitive, quiet, intentional. It's remembering someone mentioned the hard week and checking in again. It's choosing to see the person, not just their role. I used to think what mattered most was building a life that looked successful from the outside. Now I think it's building a life where people feel seen when they're around you. Daniel eventually retired last year. On his last day, there was a small gathering in the lobby. Nothing fancy, just coffee and a handwritten card signed by nearly everyone in the building. The security guard cried. So did the receptionist. When it was my turn to say goodbye, I thanked him, but it felt insufficient. He shook my hand and said, "Keep noticing." That was it. No speech, no dramatic goodbye. Just 2 words. Keep noticing. Now, whenever I catch myself obsessing over the next milestone, I pause. I think about the notebook with names. I think about hospital rooms and second chances. And I ask myself a simple question. If everything changed tomorrow, what would I wish I had paid more attention to today?